Hello, everybody. My name is Brennan,
You've got Gabe.
And I'm Parker.
and this is Shadow Valley. Play that shit, guys. Let's do this. This is Shadow Valley coming live from Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City, Utah.
Yeah.
Yes, Shadow Valley. We've got a doozy for you guys today. We're going to be hitting something pretty heavy. The Hillside Stranglers. Commonly thought to be one single strangler, but it is actually two.
And guess what?
And they're
They were cousins.
related.
And they were roommates. Bring that classic back.
And they were roommates.
And they were roommates. Yeah. So these two cousins ended up, unfortunately, these are the murders that we know of. I think they probably have done other things, but the confirmed murders are 10 women, mostly all like prostitutes, sex workers, stuff like that.
Girls
that,
ages from 12 to 28.
Yes. So, and it was younger girls as well. But
Just crazy.
it's very sad, obviously, and we want to hit this because it is very. Again, I think we hit this with every topic that we talk about, but it is important to know. But it's going to be more of like an upsetting episode.
Yeah.
If that deters anybody, I apologize, but we'll
A
try
lot
to
of
keep it
rape
brief.
involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do our best to keep it brief. We're not going to go through much of the detail, obviously, because we don't. We also don't really want to.
I do want to say
Talk about
something
it, I guess.
real quick. Just going on about it. Fuck these two fucking pricks. Like, let's get that out of the way first. Like, our view on this is totally with the victims. These guys are terrible freaking people. They deserve the worst things to happen to them in hell. And you know what? I'm going to go out and say it. The fact that they targeted women and raped women makes them bitches.
Yep.
Fuck them. They should go kill themselves.
Well, and they like, especially, so there's two guys, Angelo Buono and Kenneth Bianchi, but especially Angelo Buono was like infamous for just treating women awful. Like, he literally just referred to his mom as like the C word, or like I don't even want to say it because I drop F bombs. I don't even say that word.
What's the
Dude.
C word?
That word is foul, dude.
Okay.
That word is
foul.
It like makes me. I hate saying that word.
Really?
I've maybe said it maybe twice in my life. I hate that.
Really?
Word. It is foul, dude.
I
It's
say
so
when I'm
aggressive.
like road rage, I'll be like, "You dumb mother," like, like I'll say it when I'm road raging on the road because it's like, Utah drivers, we're notorious for being the worst drivers in the nation.
Most Utah people, when they get behind a wheel, their two brain cells are fighting for their effing life.
We got our licenses from a cereal box.
It's
It was
true.
a prize from Lucky Charms.
It's true.
I've never heard that before. That's awful.
Yeah, we all flip the box upside down to get to our prize first. We open it from the bottom instead.
I got
Basically.
mine out of a Tootsie Pop.
Oh, did you really now?
Yeah, the center of the Tootsie Pop.
Nice.
Nice.
I remember when it fell out of my Frosted Flakes.
I had a buddy that just turned in a bunch of box tops for it.
Nice. Now that's dedication. He did the work.
But yeah, let's hop into this. So I'm just gonna hit on. I guess I can hit on one or I can hit on two, but I'll start off here with Kenneth Bianchi, and we were kind of unsure how to pronounce his name. I was thinking Kenneth Bianchi, but it's probably a little bit better Kenneth Bianchi. Anyway, so Kenneth was born on May 22nd, 1951 in Rochester, New York. His cousin, Angelo Buono, was born on October 5th, 1934 in Rochester, New York as well. As you can tell, there's a pretty big age gap in them. It's about 20 years. But both these guys, obviously they grew up and
Their mothers should have gotten an abortion.
geez.
Well, so I mean, Kenneth's real mom was a prostitute, and she gave him up for adoption because she got pregnant. Which, like,
Good on her though for not like
Yeah.
she knew she wasn't going to be a good mother.
Whoa.
yeah, or just
Well-
like didn't feel like she could provide or be
Yeah.
there for her kid. Like, I definitely won't fault her for that, but I would guess that it probably irked him or like his whole life. That may be some reason for why he acted the way he did and targeted women the way he did.
Mhm.
So you mean to tell me that instead she should have just swallowed?
I don't know because I wasn't there. I don't know what the sexual situation was.
See,
but-
that's the level-headedness we need right now. It's
Yeah.
just, I don't know. I don't know.
I wasn't there. I'm not aware, but I think that she did the best she could with what she had, in my opinion.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was totally great of her to take responsibility and realize like that she wasn't going to be able to provide for him, and gave him up for adoption. Or you know what? Even better if she hated the little fun.
The little fun.
Yeah, I think that would be okay too because you know what? He's a fucking bastard. Actually, quite literally, he is. He lost his dad, so yeah, he technically is a bastard.
You're not wrong. I mean, yeah, you're not wrong.
So fuck the little bastard. I can say that, and it's actually correct. Fuck you, people who want to cancel me.
Okay.
I don't think anyone wants to cancel you over the word bastard. It's
Yeah.
the other things.
It's the other things. So yeah, I think just to hit on what Parker had mentioned too, very commonly, like serial killers have a lot of issues when they're young in terms of like family and home life, right? A lot of them end up being sexually abused, mentally abused, and physically abused when they're children. And that obviously always plays into I misspoke just then. It doesn't obviously, and not always, but most of the time, most serial killers, they have a very rough or a very strong but very corrupted connection to their mother or father. And that can be a very common issue or common occurrence within a lot of these very prominent serial killers, especially like somebody like just one that comes to mind was what's his name? Oh crap! I just forgot Jeffrey Dahmer. But yeah, so let me just continue on here. Both parents, obviously, like Parker just said, they were divorced, and then with Kenneth, they gave him up, and pretty much through his entire young life, he was just kind of a shitty kid. He was always trying to rob. He was just causing like he was just a menace at all times, pretty much. And then he actually eventually ended up joining the U.S. Army because he thought it would get him out of like some trouble he got into when he was a young dude.
Did it work?
No, it did not. He was discharged and still faced the consequences of his own actions, as you would. And then for Buono, he also engaged in a lot more criminal activity. He was a lot more violent with his criminal activities, but he was involved in a bunch of scams, mostly all financial scams, because he could not hold a job and he was kind of stupid.
Fair enough.
He kept like trying to start random businesses. Like he had a business for like an auto shop
Yeah.
that just didn't hold, and then he tried to do a what are those called? Like repo?
Oh, like a repo?
No, not repo.
An MLM.
No, it's like for seats, for car seats. And stuff.
Upholstery.
Yeah, that's what it was, an
Oh.
upholstery business, and that also failed. So he tried
Wait,
to.
who? Who was that? You said?
That was Buono.
Oh, gotcha.
But yeah, so I'm kind of just skimming by just because we want to get to the more bulk of the episode here. So after all this kind of stuff happened, Bono met up with his cousin, and that's about when they started to engage in these acts
Yeah.
of murders and kidnaps and stuff. But yeah, Brennan and Parker want to hit on these a little bit more, so I'll give them time.
Right. So just talking about Bono, and kind of some stuff that was going on there. Like even when he was a young kid, he showed signs of deviant behavior, particularly towards women. He was kind of a peeping Tom, and he was very. I think he was caught with like his mother's underwear at some point.
I did not see that. That is filthy.
Yeah, I mean, just a lot of deviant behavior to where, like he wasn't wearing it. Like, let's clear that up. He was just caught with it. Like, no shame if like you like to wear women's underwear, but like, I don't want that to come off as that's what he was doing because there's no record of that. But
Well, the issue is that it's his mom's, I think, here. It's nothing to do with that it's even women's necessarily. It's just kind of like not, I don't know, that's really the norm, you know, for young kids.
yeah, you're not wrong. But yeah, so his childhood was marked by a lot of abuse, like we were talking about, and kind of because of, I think we can get into the nature versus nurture argument about this, but I think due to a combination of the abuse and just kind of how he was already, like genetically, that it caused him to have this deviant behavior. And, you know, habits are learned. They're not necessarily like just there, if you know what I mean. And so somewhere along the way, he developed the habits to be a pervert and, you know, quote unquote deviant against women. And he didn't have someone there, or he wasn't taking enough control to be reprimanded or to break that habit. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think a lot of these serial killers, it comes down to control, like you're saying. And especially, I think, when there's issues with your mom, a lot of times it comes out in the way you treat other women, whether it's a serial killer or just normal people. But, you know, Kenneth Bianchi, I think he always held it against his mom for giving him up for adoption. And that's something he didn't have control over in his life. So it makes sense why he'd want to exert control over other women. And then Angelo Buono, I'm not sure what, you know, his mom did to him. Well, actually, so I remember in my research that supposedly his mom would like have sex with men for favors from them, as according to him. There's not actually any fact on that, but like, for example, a repairman comes to the house, well, they didn't have any money, so instead of paying him or to get a deal, she would perform sexual acts, which is a whole nother thing. But the big issue is he claimed that she would actually bring him with her, and he'd like wait outside the door or the car or wherever it was,
which can be
and
like
whether that's
horrible.
What?
That just is horrible for a child, you know, like having to experience that's horrible.
Yeah, so I mean, whether that's true or not, we actually don't know, but that's what he claims, personally, and his mother denies it, I guess. But
Yeah.
you know, but
well, these perverts will say literally anything to try and make themselves look good. Like, remember Arthur Gary Bishop, who did the whole like speech at the end where he's reading from the letter, and he was like, well, you know, I'm only this way because of pornography.
Mm-hmm.
Pornography was the only reason why I did this. If it wasn't for that, and we need to really lead the campaign against pornography because this is why I did what I did. Like, if, you know what, I'm doing a voice totally wrong. If it wasn't for pornography, I wouldn't have done it. Oh my God.
I don't know what
And
audio
he just
you
starts
listen
breathing
to.
and chuckling just like that.
I just try and like imagine what a pervert might do. That was like my goal there. Just heavy breathing, like pedophile Bigfoot. Just
That is so horrible.
it is pretty bad, but like that's where I was trying to go with that. But you know what? Like these pieces of shit, like they get caught and they try and make excuses for why they did stuff because they're narcissists. And I don't know. Have you guys? I'm sure I've told you the narcissist prayer before, but
Yeah.
if not, it's and just for anybody else who might have not heard it, but this is what narcissists will say. It didn't happen, and if it did, it wasn't my fault, and if it was, I didn't mean it, and if I did, then you deserved it. And you know, it's what these psychopaths do. They'll claim, no, it didn't happen. And if you could prove it, it wasn't my fault. It was this reason. And if it was my fault, I didn't mean it. It was an accident.
Yeah, they're almost just like gaslighting everyone.
And if I did, they deserved it. Like, oh my God, you have no idea how much they deserved it. Like, no, none of that's valid at all. Like, you know what I mean? They're complete narcissists and they come up with these things because they want to try and make themselves look good or not actually take responsibility for what they've done. And Arthur Gary Bishop did just that too, because he was like, oh, look, pornography was the thing. I only did it because of pornography. It's not my fault. And, you know, these guys too, this was Bianchi, right?
Well, it was the one that had his mom
That's Buono.
had like perform favors or whatever. That was Buono, yeah.
And so who's to say Buono isn't here just saying like, oh, this is why it happened, blah, blah, blah. You know, we didn't really mean it. And then, but he denies it too. Like he denies it. And I think he's still alive and he still denies it to this day or something like that.
No, well, Buono's dead. They both pretty well admitted, I think, especially Bianchi, but they pretty much came clean, I think.
Well, I don't think so because I read that Bono maintained his innocence, claiming Bianchi was solely responsible for the
Oh, really?
murders. Yeah.
Oh, well, I don't know. That's interesting because Bianchi like pretty much spilled his guts like when they'd interview him, and, like
They
he'd talk
did.
about pretty much everything except for he got weird when they started talking about the younger kids.
Yeah.
He didn't really want to talk about it that much.
Right. And I don't know. He came clean, but he blamed it all on Bianchi. That was his whole thing. Buono was like, it's all Bianchi's fault. And then testified him that way, which, you know, if you want like a conviction, what's better than that? Because also too, like Bianchi and Bono, like they both had different trials. Like they weren't on the same, like tried together, you know what I mean? And so in Buono's defense, he could have just not admitted like anything at all during his trial. I don't know if he pleaded guilty. Now that's something else. Most narcissists actually don't plead guilty because they think they can get away with it. Actually, I'm not gonna lie. When I was on that jury earlier this year, the guy, like the minute he got up on the stand, you could tell like he was a narcissist and some of the things he was doing just wasn't there. And he would proclaim till the day he died that he was innocent, but the facts and the evidence showed otherwise. Which is why we had to pursue a conviction. And it's, you know, it's just this idea that, oh, nothing can happen to me. I'm invincible. I'm this great person. And so people are going to believe me. You know what I mean? You guys?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm hearing you. Yeah, so where do we last leave off before this?
Before this?
Yeah.
We were talking
We were
about,
talking about,
nature
like-
versus nurture in a way, how
Oh,
they
right,
deny
right,
it.
right.
Like Arthur Bishop did the whole pornography thing.
Right. And so kind of
And-
just to give a little bit more background on Buono and his hatred for women, I guess. So initially, like it was stated before, his parents did divorce. And after that, that was really when he started to feel like kind of just like a distaste or like a hatred toward female characters. He eventually, around 14, started to describe his mom as like a whore, pretty much. And he started telling his friends and stuff. He would like brag. He would brag that he was like a woman hater and that he treated them badly and he would like rape women when he was 14.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is pretty stupid. Like 14-year-olds, like I get it, they can be stupid, but like that's a new level of stupid and despicable. Like, and back in the day, like teachers could beat the shit out of kids.
Yeah, dude.
I don't understand how this kid just didn't get like humbled by a teacher. Oh yeah, like little Sally on the playground probably heard he hates women and it was like, Miss Jane, freaking Boner hates women. And, you know, teacher's probably just like, if I was the teacher, I'd be like, get his ass in here now. I'm pulling out the paddle. We're going to beat the fuck out of this little one.
Well,
You don't want to respect women? Oh, let me teach you with the Board of Education.
well, that's the thing is that he was like such a menace, like I was saying earlier, that he couldn't stay in any school because he would just break into stuff. He would just rob people.
It's because you
And-
didn't beat the fuck out of him hard enough.
Yeah. So then he eventually went over to like a youth facility, which then he also escaped from there. But like, so he never was able to stay in an actual like place until it came to Paso Robles School. That's where he started to idolize like rapists and womanizers and stuff like that. And he would tell people,
Right.
that his role models
Yeah.
were like rapists.
Really.
Yes.
You know, just going on with the fact that he'd run away from schools and get into stuff and going back to the beating, you can't run away if you can't walk.
Jeez. Did you break his legs? What are you implying?
Take as you want with that. But I'm just saying, a lot of their problems could be taken care of if he just wasn't walking.
Okay. What the?
How did you think he'd run away in a wheelchair? He'd
Oh,
hit like a pothole and like his life
He
would
might be
over.
faster.
In a wheelchair?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
bet he'd be faster.
Well, if his mom's really a whore, then like,
But what if his arms are yoked?
nah, dude, he's a 14-year-old.
I guess.
He actually,
And he's a bitch.
he he's quite the ladies' man, like even at that age,
But he was abusive.
which is kind of weird because he's like a jerk to women.
Yeah.
But you know, that's a thing. That's a whole thing. But he would like brag, or he'd like talk to his friends too, and be like, "Oh man, like I just would like to rape someone someday. Like that just sounds awesome." And they're like, "What the heck? Like you're 14? Like
Yeah,
we're
dude.
talking about like Yu-Gi-Oh cards." And he's like, I just kind of want to rape someone.
That's like,
So-
but if you think, like, put yourself in that situation, you're a 14-year-old kid. What grade is that? Like 8th grade, 9th grade?
8th grade, 8th or 9th, yeah.
And your friend is telling you he idolizes rapists and he hates women, that he wants to rape somebody. It's, what do you do at that point? I just be like, what the like, I'm gonna report you, bro. Like, what the heck?
Exactly.
Your
Reporting to
guidance
the Board
counselor
of
doesn't get paid
Education.
enough.
Oh
Yeah,
my
dude.
god. That's how I feel whenever I go to McDonald's and I see somebody take like extra ketchup packets and the McDonald's workers just kind of stare at him and they're just like, I don't get paid enough to tell this person no.
Dude, I take extra ketchup packets all the time. I have a whole jar in my house of Taco Bell sauces.
Oh, I believe you.
Taco
Yeah.
Like
Bell's
my
different,
grandma has them in
okay.
the fridge.
I tell them, give me all the sauce you can without getting in trouble. Because obviously I don't want them to get in trouble, you know?
Yeah. Fair enough. But
I
no,
prefer them to get in trouble.
literally you can take if you go inside, they just have them laying out there and like you're supposed to not take that many or take any home, like ideally. But everybody does it. Like I see people all the time, like they're done with their meal, but they bring the Taco Bell bag over and they're just like dumping the sauce in the bag. Maybe that's a West Valley thing. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
What?
But I I don't know. Have you seen people dump like the sauces in their bags and just take it home?
I do. I mean, I do that. I am them.
Oh, okay, cool. Just
That
making
is
sure
me.
we're on the same
That
page.
is me. I do that all the time.
Okay, cool. Well, you said you asked. Like these people are inside just like stealing. Not stealing because they left it out. Well, but you know what I mean. Like you leave a candy bowl out for the trick-or-treaters. You don't expect one trick-or-treater to take the whole bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways.
So, yeah, back to let's hop back into this. So, Biono, so his first marriage was at age 20.
Yeah.
He got this girl pregnant, and they ended up marrying at 17 years old, or she was 17 years old, and he was 20 when they got married. Their son was born in January 10th, 1956.
I think that's when my dad was born.
No way.
Not on the same, like not in January, but I think the same year.
Oh wow. During this time, he was actually in jail for another car theft.
Really?
Yeah.
He missed the birth. Even he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't
So-
even close to around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he was in jail during that time, and so eventually, she ended up divorcing him, as you would, pretty close to after their son was married, and then he ended up marrying again a second time to Mary. That lasted only about 5 years, and they had there was a sixth child that was born, and he also at that time sodomized and raped his wife in front of all the children.
Oh yeah, I read about that. Where like, I think it was this lady that like
Yeah, so
he was like,
They called her Candy because she was
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay, so she like, he wanted sex basically, and she refused him, and he was like, "I'll show you," and so he like took her out in the front room in front of all of their kids and like raped her in front of their whole family, which is like sounds like the greatest family home evening ever. But yeah, it's just crazy to think of a guy like, just like, none of our parents are perfect, okay? I still can't imagine any of them doing anything like that.
Yeah.
Like that's
It's
insane.
horrible. It's disgusting.
Yeah, I don't see
Yeah.
that being anything actually like real. You know what I mean? Like a normal parent,
Yeah.
like only piece of shit parents would do something like that.
Yeah, I mean this guy's not normal by any means too.
No.
And we'll come to
Yeah.
you guys will come to like I guess flesh that out a little bit more as we discuss, but after this Candy obviously divorced him as well, and then Buono met Nanette. I apologize if I butchered that name, but her and her 2 kids moved in with him, and he also started to rape her as well, and then Buono actually started to rape her 14-year-old daughter, Nanette's 14-year-old daughter. So he's a pretty disgusting person. After around this time was when he started that upholstery business, and I wanted to bring that up earlier because it plays a pretty big role in their actions come down the line with him and his cousin. And we can discuss this further as we go on, but they use the shop as kind of their hub of like luring women in, and that's kind of where they do their whole ordeal
Yeah.
is in this shop. So it'll come up quite often.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I just like hearing about this, reading it and stuff. I'm like, I can't even believe people like this have existed, and that they can like feel okay doing stuff like this to like other human beings. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is pretty insane. It's interesting that however bad Buono was up until this point, like, well, I guess we are lucky that it was up until this point that he like didn't involve himself yet in murdering people. It was mainly just raping, and it was those that were close to him, because again, it was almost that dominant, that dominance of being able to, I guess, like push your will onto those people that can't really do or can't defend themselves. you know. And
Yeah, it's like a control issue.
right, and it's the same thing that we've been discussing with these past people, and like somebody that we discussed quite a bit on was Jeffrey Epstein with his like with the children. You know, that was a very big thing where we all kind of came to the same conclusion that it was more of a dominance thing. You know, you try and take this innocence, and again, it was the same with Bono on top of his hatred for women. But yeah, we can let's dive into a little bit more here,
because at this point in time, we've kind of dug into a little bit more of like their early life and growing up, and kind of already showing signs of being little shits. And so now this is where we get into some bigger stuff. What happened was Bianchi, he ended up moving to Los Angeles in 1975, and this began to mark the beginning of the infamous period with Buono. And actually, just to hit on this, what they would do to kind of start getting into the murders and doing this, and how they were like actually performing them, is they would both pose as police officers to lure their victim.
Wait.
What?
There's some important things that like kind of happened before this. If you don't mind, I can touch on it real quick.
You said quick. Go. I'm just kidding.
Okay, well, it's quick. So basically, they were both into like getting call girls for like they'd call girls there, prostitutes, whatever, sex workers, and they would have sex with them. And then not only would they have sex with them, which is illegal for that to do that, but they would both have sex with these sex workers, and then they would just not pay them, and then just like flash their badges as police officers and say, if you don't want to get arrested, just get out of here. And so they did that for a while, and then they eventually actually kidnapped 2 girls that were call girls, and decided they were going to like hold them prisoner and pimp them out to other people, and like take all the money from it. And so they did that before all the murders, and like it's like you can see them progressively getting worse and worse, because it's like, okay, car theft, and then raping your wife and stuff, and then pimping out these girls and holding them as prisoner, and then it like gets into the murders. But both of the girls eventually do escape, because one of these girls goes to a guy, and he ends up, instead of like having sex with her, she just like spills her guts to him, and he's like, oh my gosh. And it's actually, I can't remember who it was, but it was a guy who was like pretty prominent in Hollywood at the time. And he's like, oh, okay, this isn't right, like you're literally a sex slave. And so he flew her back to her family in Arizona like that night. And then the other girl was like, oh, she got away, so I must be able to get away, because they would like threaten them. And the reason they wouldn't run away is because they would BS these girls and say, we've got mafia connections, and if you don't do what we say, even if you run away, we'll find you and we'll kill you. So that's a lot of why they wouldn't try and run away, is because they would just like BS their way around everything, and like instill fear in these girls. So anyways, so that happened, and then after that is kind of when you get into like their first victims and stuff.
Yeah, and then I'll just go over their victim list here really quick, and I apologize if I don't pronounce these names correctly. So their first victim was Yolanda Washington, and she was part of the. I correct me if I'm wrong, Parker, but I believe she was part of that the 2 pair that they were trying to like kidnap.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, I'm a little blurry. I can't remember the details exactly. I think she's definitely involved in that. I think it was okay. So I think Yolanda. So the girl that got away second, that wasn't from Arizona, that like she just got away after the other girl got away. So she was friends with Yolanda, and so they knew they couldn't kill the girl that they were pimping out. because people knew them and knew her as like they knew that those two were pimping her out. So if she wound up dead, they'd be the first suspects. And so to teach her a lesson, they couldn't kill her, so they killed her best friend instead. So that was Yolanda Washington. Was the girls they were pimping out? It was her best friend. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, I do remember now. Okay, so it was Yolanda Washington, Judy Miller, Lisa Castine, Jane King, Dolores Cepeda, Sandra Johnson, Christina Weckler, Lauren Wagner, Kimberly Martin, Cindy Lee Hudspeth. So those are the names of the unfortunately the woman that came to the hands of these two guys. And Yolanda Washington was the first one. She was a prostitute that they tried to pick up, or they did pick up, and this was on October 17th, 1977. She was kidnapped by Bianchi and Buono, and they threw her in the back of the car, or in the back seat of the vehicle, and they tied her up and abused her there, and they dumped her body near a cemetery, and her body was actually it was discovered by the police the following morning, actually. And they did do an examination. They found semen in her vagina and her rectum as well. So, but the hard thing with this, obviously, with murders like these, a lot of the time, unfortunately, it's a lot of like prostitutes. So common thing with prostitutes or murders that were involving prostitutes or any sex workers, a lot of the time, unfortunately, police didn't really look too closely at these because they were sex workers, because they were prostitutes. They just kind of chalked it up to, well, that's just kind of like
an occupational hazard,
essentially, which is super sad because a lot of these victims, and that's mainly why sorry, I keep jumping around, but a lot of these victims, unfortunately, never really were looked at much deeper than that. You know, they found this dead body. It was obviously presented in a very horrifying way. Like it was, and that's another thing with serial killers. They want to give the most shock factor. And so they present the bodies in this really horrible way. But that's a common thing with a lot of serial killers and murderers, is that they go over, back then in the day, they would go after these prostitutes and these sex workers because they knew that people wouldn't look too deeply at them, which is very sad. A lot of these women didn't get the justice they deserved at the time. Obviously now it's much different, but yeah, just wanted to hit on that because that's very important detail that I think some people forget to think about.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. So after the murder of Yolanda Washington, we have the murder of Judy Miller, who was 15 years old. Judy Miller was a teenager with her whole life ahead of her, was found on October 31st, 1977. She was discovered in a residential area of Los Angeles, lying on a grassy slope.
So this is probably the only murder that we're really going to go into heavy detail on, just because a lot of the murders that the cousins did, the Stranglers did, they kind of followed the same exact steps. Not the same exact steps. Obviously, there's variations and stuff, and Park can talk more about that in a minute. But yeah, so just heads up, this is kind of rough. I'll kind of skim through the details, but so Judy was actually a sex worker as well. She left her family because they were just kind of poor, and she felt like, well, I can do better on my own.
Isn't it sad? She was just 15 and she was a sex worker.
Yeah, man, and that's the sad thing, is that, again, a 15-year-old sex worker, mind you, she is 15, but the cops are going to see this and say, well, just sex workers, you know.
Yeah,
which is just sad. But like with everybody else, they would flash their fake police badges and then claim that they were under arrest because they were sex workers. So they they got Judy, put her in the back of the car, and they stuffed a rag into her mouth, handcuffed her, and taped foam pads over her eyes. Again, this is all from the foam pads, and then all the wires and the stuff like that is all from the upholstery shop that Angelo owned. But so they took her to Angelo's house. They undressed her, and then they began to rape her. First, Angelo took his turn, and then after, Ken immediately hopped on and started to rape her as well. After this,
one thing with that too, they would this is so jacked up. They'd flip a coin to see who got to go first.
Yeah, and it starts to become more. Their actions and stuff start to become a lot more heinous and just disgusting as their murders go on. Obviously, a lot of, we stated this earlier, but they would freak sex workers out by flashing their badges, but they wouldn't get to the point of murdering, like Parker stated, until these first Yolanda Washington. And it was almost like they were just testing the waters, and then when they got to a point where they were like, oh, this isn't kind of giving me that high anymore or whatever, they went to the next thing and the next thing. And again, we'll go a little bit more into detail on that. But they tied her down, and Angelo put a bag over Judy's head, and they put a cord around it and pulled it tighter until she died. They completely ripped off all of her clothes, and they took her to a location that Angelo had decided and spread her legs open just so she could be seen like that, completely sodomized and taken advantage of. Again, this girl's 15 years old, and it just gets worse. There's and we won't go into much detail into these two, but the two youngest girls that they raped and killed were 12 and 14. But yeah, so again, I'm not gonna go too much more into what happened to these other women. There are some other details, small changes and stuff that we'll hit on here in a minute. But that was Judy Miller, 15 years old, October 31st. She was found, 1977.
Next, we have Lisa Caston.
So crazy.
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead, Brennan. It just blows my mind.
Next, we have Lisa Caston, 21 years old. Lisa was a young waitress and dancer who was dedicated to her job and beloved to those who knew her. Found on November 6, 1977, Lisa's life was brutally ended. She was discovered in the hills near Dodgers Stadium.
So this one's pretty messed up as well. Obviously, they did all the same stuff, but in this one, interestingly, Angelo said that he was not attracted to her. So he just passed her off to Ken. And Ken eventually, again, they kind of make it worse and worse every time they murder somebody. But Ken got a beer bottle and began to abuse her and rape her with this beer bottle.
Which, so what's super jacked up about it is, okay, there's these monsters. These guys are like monsters, just pigs of people, right?
Mm-hmm. Pieces of shit.
And the reason that they had this, they weren't attracted to this woman was because she had she just hadn't shaved her legs. Her legs, it's who cares about that, and
right.
If you look up pictures of this girl, she was beautiful. There's no reason that she wasn't good enough for these pigs, you know what I mean? And so it makes me mad because it's for this girl to not even be good enough for you to rape her is just such a monstrosity, such a discredit to her. But I'd like to, I guess, say just on her behalf that she was super awesome. She's actually part of a band. They would perform at I'm pretty sure they performed at the Playboy Mansion and stuff like that. Super cool, free spirit, just awesome girl, super beautiful. And yeah, she wanted to be a dancer. And that's kind of why she was there in LA, was to try and make it big time and stuff like that. But yeah, she also is one of the few that actually kind of, when they flashed their badge at her, she was like, I'm not doing anything wrong. Like, no, you're not taking me. And so, you know, props to her. She kind of tried to like fight back and was definitely, you know, her own person and stuck up for herself. But ultimately, the way they got her to come in was they said that they just had to question her because there's some robberies and someone had a similar car as her. And so, anyway, so she finally agreed to go down for questioning. And then when they headed towards Angelo's house, they were like, this, you know, she's like, we're not headed to the police station. What the heck? And they're like, well, this is a satellite police station. And, you know, it's because we're undercover for this case or whatever. Like, and then, anyways, and then when they got there, of course, they did what they did. But I just want to say, you know, to all the victims, but especially to her, like, you know, props for doing you. And sounds like with her personality, she probably would have made it pretty big. You know, it didn't seem like she was one to take no for an answer. So, but yeah, super bummer. Like, it's heavy stuff, but also I think to really pay respect to the victims and not to the murderers, like some of that stuff has to be mentioned, you know? So,
yeah, definitely. This is so unfortunately, Lisa was actually like when they really started to I guess indulge the other monstrosities of like torture, because Angelo wasn't attracted to her. He started to torture her in different ways. This is when they tied the cord around her neck and they would slowly tighten and loosen to let little bits of oxygen come in so she could, or so she would see and still know all this horrible stuff that was going on. Eventually, obviously, they killed her and she was found again the very next day.
Next, we have Jane King, 28 years old. Jane was an aspiring actress who had moved to Los Angeles with dreams of making a successful career in the entertainment industry. Her body was found November 10th, 1977, near a freeway ramp.
Again, these are, so she also, all of these, I know I keep saying this to sound like a broken record, but they progressively get worse and worse, but they all have about the same idea. They convince these people that they're being arrested. In this case, they just drove up to her and said, hey, do you need a ride, or do you need a ride home? So they went over to pick her up. They actually drove to Angelo's house, obviously, and then proceeded to murder her at that point as well.
Next, we have Dolores Cepeda, who is 12, and Sonia Johnson, who is 14. Dolores and Sonia, two young friends, were last seen alive on November 13th, 1977, taking a bus to a shopping mall. Their bodies were found together on a hillside on November 20th, 1977.
I don't, again, this one just kind of, it's just sad. I think all of these are very, very sad, but these are the two young girls that were murdered, 12 and 14. They were actually found by another young kid. He was 9 years old. He found them. It's super sad. It's very sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember reading that he actually thought that they were just mannequins. You know, because he's 9 years old. He obviously wouldn't expect to see dead bodies. And so he went over there and that's how he discovered them, was thinking that they were mannequins. And he was kind of like, what the heck? And yeah, I think his older brother ended up calling the cops and they came and looked at it.
It's crazy. It's all crazy. And, you know, at the end, after we cover all the victims, there's just something I want to say just because it's true. And it just shows the type of people they really are. And oh my God, we'll get there. And then I can like release my wrath My wrath will come unto them like it comes onto Dick Cheney.
Oh my goodness. Well, hey, we got it plugged in. We're good to go. We're set now. So yeah, so the murders of the two girls were actually one of the first things that set off the media. Then people started kind of looking into it. Obviously, unfortunately, for Yolanda and Judy, they weren't looked at very much because they were prostitutes, but they did start to look into the two murders of sorry, I just spaced their names.
Dolores
And Sonia. Yeah, I apologize. But after this, they started to look into it, and the name Hillside Strangler came to fruition actually, and that's what people started to know them by, was because they kept finding these women on just kind of the side of the road, essentially.
Yeah.
So
Next, we have Christina Weckler, who's 20 years old. She was a quiet and studious college student, was known for her artistic talents and kind nature. Found on November 20th, 1977. Christina's body was located on a hillside in Glendale.
So this is probably one of the worst ones, in my opinion. This one was almost because of spite from Ken. So he actually tried to ask her out on a date, and she rejected him. So she eventually moved into the same building, and he moved into the same building, and that's when they abducted her, took her to Angelo's house, and they raped and sodomized her there as well. And then this part is kind of a little bit intense, and I know Parker wanted to say something about this on Christina Weckler.
So they ended up, the way they got her out to her car, because she did not like Ken. She was like, you're a creep, and that's why she obviously said no to going on a date with him. And so what they ended up doing was they said, hey, someone hit your car, and he's like, and good news, I'm on the LAPD reserve, so I can help you with this and get you a good insurance payout and stuff like that. So why don't you come take a look at it, and we'll fill out some paperwork. And so as soon as she got out there, and then Angelo and Kenneth attacked her and threw her in the car, and they're super brutal, because he was so pissed off that she had said no to him, which is the audacity. Someone said no to a freak like him,
I know,
it's just ridiculous.
I mean, that just goes to play how much of a narcissist he really was.
Just how monstrous they are.
Yeah, and then they bound her like normal, but they were trying to be extremely brutal, so they ended up Angelo grabbed a needle that he'd used for drugs, and he put Windex in it and injected her in her neck and in her arm, and thinking it would kill her, and it didn't end up killing her, but it sent her into convulsions, and after a while she still wouldn't die, so they ended up putting the bag around her head with a cord like normal, but then they also had a gas pipe that was sticking out to hook a gas oven to, but there's no oven there, so they just put the pipe in the bag, and they would put gas in there and suffocate her as well. And this is one of the most brutal ones. It probably took one of the longest to die, and probably the longest time, in pain between the Windex and the gas and stuff like that, and everything. So yeah, it was pretty brutal, but it's also just ridiculous that the whole reason that they were so awful to her was just because she was actually a human being with some sense enough to say no to going on a date with him, and it still didn't matter.
Yeah, it's just disgusting. The other thing too is when the police found her body, they saw heavy bruising, fingers on her breasts, and a significant amount of rectal bleeding. Unfortunately, though, because they did see the needle holes in her arms, they thought that she was just a drug addict, and so they didn't actually do too much investigation on this, which is, I think, unfortunately, a lot of the time, the police work kind of fails a lot of these people and a lot of these victims, and they really, really did this woman a disservice.
Yeah, that's I didn't know that. That's rough. But there was two guys, and I'm sure you guys know their names, I can't remember, but they were pretty, like, they were kind of detectives that were kind of made famous after this case because they were calling it serial killings from the second murder. They're like, oh, we've got a serial killer on our hands, but the rest of the police force kind of like didn't see it. But anyways, so props to those two guys because everyone else couldn't see it.
Yeah, exactly. It's so disgusting what these two did, and I get even more infuriated a little bit more, and you'll know more. But our next victim is Laura Wagner. Lauren was a young woman with a vibrant life ahead of her. Living in the San Francisco Valley, she was found on November 29th, 1977, after being abducted right near her home.
So this one actually is pretty sad as well, just because. So this one was witnessed. The whole entire kidnapping was witnessed by one of the neighbors, and they just chalked it up to, oh, it's just like a frustration with the girlfriend or something like that. Like, it's just ridiculous. They stopped her and said, we're making an arrest. But she said, no, I don't want to come with you guys. So they picked her up, threw her in the car. The neighbors saw this all happen. All of it. It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
In defense of the neighbor, I guess supposedly that what the neighbor said, like, to the cops, because they were like, well, why didn't you report it, and she was like, I feel so bad and I'm so embarrassed. But she said that she herself had been raped when she was younger, and watching them like throw her in the car and everything, like I guess it just like sent her into panic. Like, she felt like she was reliving it right then, and she's like, I'm so ashamed, but I just feel like I felt like I was just frozen. I couldn't move or do anything because she was like reliving it. And
well, I apologize.
Not that it's necessarily an excuse at all, but like, she's like, I feel so bad. Like, I'm sure she's dead now, but she like couldn't say enough how bad she felt to the cops when they like talked to her about it.
Yeah, actually, I apologize for what I said. I actually did not know that. I apologize. I misspoke there. But to continue on here, this one was, again, they kind of just started to experiment with more and more heavy torturing. They raped her, and they actually wrapped barbed wire around her hands, and they electrified that wire and gave her shocks. She was also, again, like Brennan said, she was dumped and found on November 29th or November 30th.
It was, sorry.
Would that be December 1st?
It was November 29th.
They did find her November 20th. Oh, yes. Yeah, found November 29th.
So our next victim is Kimberly Martin, 17 years old. Kimberly was a young woman who had recently moved to Los Angeles and was trying to make a living. Her body was found on December 14th, 1977, in an empty lot.
Again, these ones, she also had to go through the same fate as the rest of these women, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate, just each of these victims. And, I hate that it keeps getting worse and worse because it's not fair. It's not fair at all to these women, and it's disgusting. But
I think another thing too to remind everybody is that all of these murders, this all happened within a span of, I believe, 5 months or 4 months. It went from November to February of the following year. So all of this happened very quick and sudden, and these murders are like extremely horrifying, which is very how do I, like, I'm sorry, I'm trying to like word this, is But it is very weird to see this many murders. As you know, a lot of these serial killers, they'll do a murder and then they'll take a break for a while and then do another murder. And it almost like helps them dull their bloodlust, like we were talking about with oh shoot, I just forgot his name. What was his name? We were talking about him in the beginning of the episode.
Oh, Arthur
Ted
Gary
Bundy
Bishop.
or-
Yeah, Arthur Gary Bishop. His like kind of buffer was murdering pets and animals to try and hopefully like not have to kill so often. And these guys, they just did it like every other day, every other week. It was like just a killing spree, a frenzy. It was ridiculous. That it all happened within a span of 5 months. Luckily, obviously, they were able to find these guys and incarcerate them. But I just wanted to emphasize how crazy it is that these horrific people just almost had like no care for anybody else, and they wanted to indulge their disgusting behavior.
Right. And so finally, we have our final victim, Cindy Lee Hudspeth. She was 20 years old. Cindy was a diligent employee and student and was found February 17th, 1978, in her car that had been pushed off a cliff.
Sorry, guys. So, yeah, again, she was she was the last one that they murdered before they were eventually caught. They also raped her and sodomized her before they strangled her. And you're right, they actually did push her vehicle off of a cliff, and they found her later down that line. But prior to this, they actually found quite a bit of punctures and cuts throughout her entire body from whatever they did to her and however they ended up torturing her.
Right. And, you know, just going on that, one thing that infuriates me, and I wanted to talk about this whole time, looking at every single way these girls were left behind was like they were a pile of trash. These girls,
They didn't care about them.
They didn't care at all. They wanted to do what they wanted to do with them. And then when they were done, they were garbage. You had somebody left next to Dodgers Stadium. You had somebody left next to the freeway. That's where you leave your couch. Like, or at least that's where you do it here. That's where you leave your couch. That's where, you know, in a parking lot, that's where you're going to find cups from 7-Eleven. Like, they treated these women like trash. And it's infuriating because these women, as we talked about, were aspiring dancers, were aspiring actresses, were students, were hardworking women. And these guys, these two pieces of shit, these whores, these absolute dog shit people, which I don't know how else to explain it, but I fucking hate these guys. And I'm glad that at least they should both be dead. Like, I wish they both killed themselves or were aborted in the womb. But,
Wow.
like, that's how much I freaking hate these guys. And, you know, I might go and say, like, I hate them more than I hate Dick Cheney. But, like, you can't treat these women like trash. That's the issue. You can't treat them like trash. You can't steal their innocence. You can't steal their lives and then treat them with such disrespect. The audacity that you would have to do to pull a stunt like that. Literally, bear with me here. The audacity, the pride that you would have to where you think you're better than this person and you think you can take their life because you think you have the fucking right to do so because you like it. Because you like it, you think you can do it. Because you like it, you think that it's okay. You think you can get what you want. You're a narcissist. You're insane. You're crazy. You just don't know what's actually going on. And the fact that you're going to go out there and commit such atrocious acts without any regard for another individual is absolutely like sickening. It's
disgusting.
It shows how terrible and like unthoughtful these people were. I think they absolutely deserve everything that happened to them and more. You know, I hope there's a special place in hell and I hope we meet up and I can have them bite the curb.
Yeah.
Y'all know what that means.
Yep. I think it's very important to say. um, so last thing that we're gonna hit on here is Ken's little reign, and this was in Washington. As stated before, Ken was convicted of killing 2 more women later down the line. So that was Karen Mandique was the yeah, I apologize again if I messed up that name. I'm sorry. But he also murdered her and he raped her. And then the other woman that he murdered, and again, these 2 women were just him. He did not have, or Angelo was not involved in these 2 murders because he later, they kind of just like separated, I believe. Is that correct, Parker? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think they got in a fight because like they kind of didn't get along super great because Angelo actually had some ambition and had like his business, and Kenneth was like a freeloader. So I think that Angelo was like, all right, like GTFO, and Ken was kind of like, screw you, I don't need you to kill people anyways. And then I think he's the one that kind of blew the whole thing up.
Right. I think I remember now. So Ken actually started to, he like got really heavily invested in the Hillside Stranglers, like the name, and it was almost like he almost got like a weird obsession with himself or the idea of himself, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
He started to talk to a lot of the police officers regarding the case, and he asked to do like ride-alongs, stuff like that. But Ken, throughout this whole time, was actually stealing things off of the victims, which is very, very common with a lot of serial killers, where they have to keep almost like a totem or like a prize of their murder. And that obviously made Angelo very angry. And so that's actually when that their like murder rampage essentially started dwindling out. Angelo left. He went back to, like Parker said, his regular life of not being a murderer. And then Ken went to Washington as a security guard, and that's when he met Karen and Diana, and he murdered both of these women. Unfortunately for Ken, and fortunately for everybody else, Ken actually was the one that pretty much like got himself caught and got them caught, actually. He got a little too close to the case, and he started asking too many questions regarding Diana and Karen. And they started looking into him, and obviously eventually found out that it was Ken. They had quite a bit of evidence pointing toward Ken, and eventually, like we stated before, I think we spoke about this in the beginning, but he did end up he did end up testifying against Angelo in the end to try and get less jail time. Just so stupid.
One thing I think that was good on the police's part, and kind of I think is what caught Ken in the end, was they would give out certain details on each thing in the newspaper, but they kept certain details away, so that if anyone mentioned the details that were not mentioned anywhere, then they could catch. Then they'd be like, "Well, how did you know that? Because that was never released." Like they never released the part about that. I can't remember which lady it was that had the needle marks from the Windex. Weckler. Was that her? Yeah, yes, Christina Weckler.
Christina Weckler.
So they put the police in their press report or whatever to the media, to the newspapers, whatever. They mentioned like, yeah, it's like a lot of these other ones, you know, they've been 5 points of binding, strangulation, yada yada yada, but they didn't mention anything about the needle marks, because then if someone else mentioned something about the needle marks, then they would know that they were involved somehow.
Right. They would immediately understand, like, oh, this is not actually, they have more details than everybody else does, so something must be up.
Yeah.
Right.
which I thought was pretty smart. Props to them.
Yeah, no, 100%. But yeah, so Ken, obviously, he ends up testifying against Angelo, and it was said to be very like exaggerated and very like, oh man, it was all Angelo's fault. He was the guy that did all this stuff. He was the one that made me do this crap and stuff. But then Angelo actually tried to, or no, sorry, my apologies. Ken started to say that he had like mental issues and that he just didn't fully ever develop. He couldn't remember, you know, blah blah blah. He thought they were all dreams. He eventually, obviously, they both get convicted and they go to jail. And that's where Angelo died, actually. I think it was just due to natural causes, is what all I see. Is that correct? I might be wrong on that.
I think he had a heart attack. Yeah.
Yeah, so he was in Folsom Prison. He had a heart attack. Yep, and he died from natural causes. Ken is actually still alive to this point.
What do you think the punishment even is, like, that's good enough? Like, I was thinking about this when I was like reading about it. I'm like, if it was my daughter or whatever, like, just shooting these guys, like, that would be somewhat satisfying for me. You know, but I just am like, I think I'd want to kill them the exact same way that they killed all their victims.
Yeah, I think I think I may have mentioned this before, but it's kind of stupid. But I always think of like Ghost Rider. His like little saying is like I'm gonna put the hurt that you've caused everybody else in one place, and I don't know. I just wish there was some way we could do that, you know. But also, not saying that I'm a murderer, but I'm sure I've probably made a lot of people upset, or you know, so I don't want that to happen to me. That would suck.
Fair enough.
But for these guys, screw them. I would love that. I would love if it happened to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I don't know. Like, I'm kind of harsh, I guess. Like Dorothy says that she's like, oh, if I got kidnapped, I don't think I'd be that worried. Like, if I could just stay alive, you'd find me. You're like Liam Neeson. That's what she said. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. But
dang,
I'm like,
dude, that's
yeah,
sick.
it's pretty like I'm like, I don't know that I have the skills like he has in Taken. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm like, I wouldn't stop until like I could see what happened. And like, I was talking to somebody the other day, and we were talking about like the molestation that happened like in the Boy Scouts and stuff. And I was like, someone did that to my kid, I'd kill him. And I'm not even like, I'm not even just saying that. Like, you wouldn't even find the body. Like, I just don't care. You don't deserve to be alive if you're gonna do that.
I agree 100%. And then I guess
fuck them up.
the one last thing that I do want to hit on is, well, she goes by Karen, quote unquote Karen, but her real name is Veronica Compton. Do you guys know about Veronica
Compton?
What the hell?
Is she Ghislaine's sister?
She's Ghislaine's sister. How'd you know, dude?
Just laying in the cuntin.
So, Veronica was pretty much obsessed with serial killers. She wrote a screenplay. It was titled "The Mutilated Cutter." It was about a female serial killer, and she got particularly obsessed with Ken, and she sent this screenplay over to Ken to have her read it, or to have him read it and get like his thoughts on it to see if it was like legit. Which is, can you imagine how effed up that is? Like, I'm gonna try and like, I'm gonna write this book and send it to this serial killer and see if it's like actually follows the train, or like actually sounds like it would be real life. You know, like, that's so messed up in my opinion. But anyway, so these two eventually started to talk, and then they started to like discuss their like fantasies of killing people and doing all this crazy shit, which is just disgusting. But eventually Ken thought up of this whole plan, thinking like, maybe I can figure out a way to use this to my advantage. This like woman loved me so much. And we were actually talking before the episode is that it's so weird that there's so many good people out there that struggle to find like love and happiness, but somebody like this piece of shit can find somebody and and you guys will hear in a second what she did for him. It is insane. It is absolutely crazy that she is willing to do these things for somebody that she's never met in real life. That's a freaking murderer.
She was a crazy bitch.
Yeah, she's crazy.
A crazy bitch.
Yeah. So she
Say it.
so Ken comes up with this idea that, well, I'm gonna have her come, or I'm gonna send her a book, or have her come visit and grab a book for me, but I'm gonna hide my semen in a plastic glove and put it in the spine of this book. Eventually, his idea was that Veronica would try and lure somebody to her apartment, murder them, and then she would plant evidence as if the Hillside Strangler was still on the loose. So then he could go to the authorities and be like, well, it's not me. Obviously, they're still out there killing people. So plan actually worked. Go ahead.
Couldn't the police have just like checked his semen against the Hillside Strangler semen that was found on the bodies, and that would be like pretty much like case solved once they had him as a suspect?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I'm not 100% sure how well our tools were to check DNA, cross-check DNA like that. I'm not
I guess that's
sure.
huge. Yeah, you're right. I didn't think about that because I'm just used to like today's day and age.
Yeah, because this was keep in mind, this was still probably 40 years ago now. Yeah, 76.
Yeah, like 77, 78, something like that.
Yeah, so it was quite a while, almost 50 years actually. Well, no, it would be closer to 40. But yeah, so it actually works though. So Karen is the alias that she went by, but Victoria goes over to the police or the prison, gets this book. She smuggles out the Ken semen, and eventually she tries to lure in a woman into her apartment. So she starts getting drinks. She gets freaking high as shit, does a bunch of cocaine, and starts dancing with this woman's family, Kim Breed, and she finally gets her to go back to her hotel. So they go back to her hotel, and Veronica tries to kill Kim, but she fails. So Kim eventually is able to escape from Veronica, and then the cops are called, and then she admits what happened. They put her in prison. She actually was released in 2003 after she had completed her sentence of trying to kill Kim. But obviously this never worked out for Ken, and they lost connection pretty much, and she forgot all about Ken and started falling in love for Bundy. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it is really interesting. All of this, like, how all of this comes together and how these two people were. It's disgusting, and it's interesting, and I think it's important to talk about, but it is really hard. And it's hard
Did
to
she
really
actually start falling in love with Bundy, or was that a joke?
No, that's let me just double check that. Here, 1 second.
I mean, I don't doubt you. I just I don't doubt you at all. I just like couldn't tell if you were joking or not, and so I was like, "Are you kidding me? This chick is low nuts, like on top of the murder." But like,
sorry. Let me. Good thing you said that, because I actually my apologies. So she did fall in love with a different serial killer. His name was Doug Clark, but his wife's name was Carol Bundy. My apologies. When I was reading through this, I kind of skimmed past that part. I saw Bundy and I was like, oh, that's interesting. She fell in love with Bundy. But
I think I've heard about those guys too. They're nuts too.
yes, they
But-
are crazy. Those guys killed 7 women and fully decapitated them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His wife would like do their makeup like on their head, like on their kitchen table and junk like that. Like
Yeah.
after they'd killed them, and she just had like a decapitated head just chilling on the table and just like do their makeup, and then he would like have sex with the heads.
Yeah, it's
So-
disgusting. They kept in touch throughout their prison sentences, and they would send each other Valentine's letters of pictures of the woman that they had murdered, which is really messed up.
Oh my gosh, it's just so crazy. And like, it's almost like they're in their own little world. It's like, it's kind of like in my industry, like concrete, like, all the concrete companies. It's like to them, it's like, oh yeah, those serial killers over there, like, yeah, we're good friends with them, and like stuff like that. Like,
Yeah,
it's just
as
like
it-
they have their own like messed up, like jacked up industry in a way.
Yeah, it's messed
them.
up, dude. Can you imagine, like, sending letters of people's heads as a Valentine's like letter? That is
So
so
gross.
ridiculous. So gross.
I'm good. I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out too.
But I think, as far as I know, that's kind of that's the cliff notes of these Hillside Stranglers. Obviously, there's a lot more detail that we did not want to get into because this is very heavy stuff, obviously. And if you do want to read up more on it, there is a lot of information on these guys. A lot of people have been able to have interviews with them and write story or books about their murders. Obviously, that's how we got a lot of our information, and we pay respect to these women that were abused, raped, murdered. I hope nobody feels like we did them a disservice, but it is important to talk about this stuff, I think, and it's very interesting to see. At least in my opinion, a lot of I did some reports back in the day when I was taking my gen eds for English and like university and stuff. And a lot of them, I was just interested by serial killers and how they kind of come to fruition. And it's interesting to see a lot of these things come into play and a lot of these killers and their actions and how they were brought up. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me, guys.
That's all I got.
Sorry, I was muted. That's I'm good too. So
Okay, cool. Well, in that case, as always, please hit us up. Our email is shadow.valleypod@thedogenetwork.com.
And please give us a follow on Instagram, Shadow Valley Pod. We try to keep it as updated as possible. Sometimes I forget to post, but I'll do my best to keep remembering. Please, guys, email us. Let us know what you like, don't like, or any topics that you'd like us to go over. We always are looking to do some more fun stuff. We've got a pretty good roster set up for this for these upcoming weeks for you guys. We sat
what's
down
next week for the teaser?
for the teaser. Let me
Nah, nobody
pull-
gets to know.
Nobody
Keep it a
knows.
secret.
It's gonna be a secret. No, I think we sat down and kind of just discussed next few weeks because we're excited. We really value, or we really want to like do good on this, if that makes sense. But
Provide value.
yeah. So the next couple of weeks, we really want to do a Thanksgiving episode. So next week we're going to go over myths, and then we're going to kind of go over Mayflower. So looking forward to that. And we've got some Illuminati and Rothschild coming soon. So yeah, let's look forward to that. And Christmas. Christmas time is going to be busy for all of us as well. So if we don't get episodes out immediately, like on the days that we usually do, just know they will be coming, but look forward to a Krampus episode from us. That'll be sick.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, guys, thanks for listening, and we hope to hear from you soon. We'll catch you next week.
Alrighty, this has been Brennan.
You've got Gabe.
And I'm Parker.
All right, you guys have a great rest of your day.